The indigenous peoples of the Amazon call it ayahuasca, the vine of death. They say when you drink the tea brewed from ayahuasca, your spirit travels to other dimensions, while your body remains behind. You pass through the world of the dead in order to live again.
La misma ayahuasca, la hoja es lo principal en toda la medicina tradicional. De ahí a otras plantas. Cuando la persona se encuentra mal, entonces llama al espíritu de la planta, ¿no? El espíritu de la planta es un hombre, pues una mujer, y según como la planta está ya manifestada, entonces el espíritu se manifiesta, puede ser si se presente un tigre o un perro, cosas así, pero más a veces se presenta, momentos precisos se presenta en persona, ¿no? Para conversar con la planta, el espíritu de la planta.
By modifying their consciousness, these people are gaining access to some kind of microscope that allows them to see, like a biologist sees, under the surface of different beings, plants or animals, down into their essence.
Okay, but this microscope never gives the same picture. In science, when we see an object in the microscope, it shows always the same picture.
When I first met Jeremy Narby, he was working to help indigenous communities in the Amazon gain legal title to their lands.
I was trying to show, to argue to international development banks, for instance, that these people knew how to use their resources rationally, contrary to what they were saying. They were confiscating these people's lands, saying they were just wasting these resources by not using them. So I didn't really have an interest in the irrational, shamanic aspect behind the ways in which these people view the forest and the lands they use. The problem was that my indigenous informants among the Shamanic, whenever we talk about how they saw the forest and plants and what they knew about their resources, they were always saying that their knowledge about plants came from ayahuasca, which is this hallucinogenic plant mixture.
Ya, aquí nada más.
Now, they were saying that in their hallucinations, they were learning about plant properties. ¿Me podrías contar la primera vez que has recibido una comunicación de una planta?
Bueno, la primera vez recibí la comunicación de la planta en el año 1961, cuando yo tomaba con el maestro Eusebio Dávila, ¿no? Y bueno, las visiones aparecían como personas, como animales y como árboles. Eso eran mis primeras visiones cuando yo tenía 15 años de edad.
Cuando estás curando a una persona en una sesión en la noche, puedes ver adentro del cuerpo del paciente.
Para hacer el estudio. El estudio es el manifiesto de la persona. El mal más fácil de la persona está dentro de la mente. La mente y el cerebro de la persona. Es por ahí entonces que entra. Entonces el curandero tiene directamente trabajar con el cerebro de la persona para empezar el trabajo a hacer el alivio del cuerpo de la persona.
So I doubted what these people said, but it seemed that the least I could do was to check it out. So I did.
One night, sitting in a quiet house with an ayahuasca shaman and two other people, he gave out some of this very bitter liquid, and I swallowed some. And he started singing these very fine melodies.
And suddenly I found myself surrounded by these enormous fluorescent snakes that were 15 yards long and a yard high. And they were radiating all this energy, and they started explaining things that were painfully true about myself in a kind of thought language. And the first message that I got from them was that I was just a very small human being. And from there I went on to vomit colors and see levitating indigenous women and fly out of my body like a rocket ship above the planet. And then saw veins of the human hand flashing back and forth with veins of a green leaf. Hundreds of thousands of images that made rock videos look like Stone Age technology. These people seemed to be accessing something that was very difficult to put into words, and that just wasn't mapped by Western knowledge. And they said that this is where their remarkable knowledge about plants came from.
When Francis Crick and James Watson succeeded in unraveling the structure of DNA in 1953, they said they had discovered the secret of life. Now, with scientists possessing the ability to transform nature's essence in a test tube, DNA has become as magical as anything brewed in a shaman's cauldron. But after seeing the twisted snakes in his own visions and in the mythology of indigenous people throughout the Amazon, Narby began to believe that the secret of DNA may have already been known by shamans for generations.
It seemed pretty improbable. What would barefoot, hallucinating shamans in the rainforest know about a molecule that you can only determine with an electronic microscope?
Narby followed a trail of sacred images of interwoven serpents extending from ancient Egypt and Oceania to the Amazon rainforest. He found that shamans of different cultures had grasped the significance of the double helix, the form of the information molecule DNA, which is at the heart of every living cell.
The more I've looked at what shamans say and what biologists say, the more I'm convinced that there's an intelligence in nature. Plants aren't just bunches of molecules. DNA is a text. that follows a coding system like a human coding system. Proteins come and transcribe it, and then the transcript, which is an RNA transcript, is edited. Other enzymes come along, splice out the meaningless bits called introns, stick together the exons which contain meaning, and add new letters to it. Now, there seems to be an active, as shamans say, an active, ongoing intelligence at work inside our own selves. So this has to do with who we are. You know, what is going on inside myself, in fact, is the question.
To test his hypothesis, Narby invited 3 molecular biologists and 1 documentary filmmaker to drink ayahuasca with an Ashaninka shaman in a scientific quest in the Peruvian Amazon.
This is a human experiment, and you are the subjects. And the first thing I think in such a situation, the person leading the experiment is to explain before the experiment starts just what the risks are. Ayahuasca is a vomitive and a purge. And so it is probable that when you drink it, you will feel nauseous, and you might vomit, and you might need to defecate. Your heart may race. You may think you're dying. In this form of knowledge, your body is your laboratory.
Laura Stuve is a senior scientist at a California genomics company.
This is where we put the DNA actually gets loaded into these little wells that creates the images that we were looking at on that monitor here.
Pia Malneau is a project director at the Swiss Federal Agricultural Research Center.
Essentially, we are introducing foreign genes into the potato cell, and then from that cell we are regenerating a new plant, and that plant is called a transgenic plant.
Jean-Pierre Dufort is a retired laboratory director at the French National Center for Scientific Research.
I guess my biggest hope is to find a way in my life that I can bridge these two compartments of my life. You know, my existence as a professional scientist who directs a lab of people that are, you know, a very well-known company in a very progressive field, and my interests and explorations into shamanism, and interested in other ways of knowing and how altered states of consciousness can provide some sort of access to information.
It was when I was about 16 years old, and at that point it was a very specific moment, just a very specific moment of springtime in Sweden. And when I was in the forest, and it was like a kind of illumination. That's why for me nature is extremely important. So I know in a certain sense already that there is a spiritual part that is very strong in nature.
As you know, I am interested by Tai Chi. I am interested by Chinese medicine. I am interested by several things. I prefer now to have time to see other things in my life. there are some questions which in my mind concerning my activity, my scientific activity. I hope I can make a focus on my life and to know what I am.
The origins of ayahuasca are a mystery, but it hardly seems possible it was stumbled on by chance. It's a sophisticated preparation combining two plants which must be taken together to produce their hallucinogenic effect.
Aprende cosas utilizando esta planta.
Ya. El ayahuasca solo no funciona, ¿no? Solo. Hay un arbolito que se llama la chacuruna, porque la ayahuasca es el varón. La planta, la chacuruna es la hembrita, la esposa del ayahuasca. Los dos unidos funcionan, la chacuruna con la ayahuasca. Entonces viene a dar sus enseñanzas los dos, la pareja, empiezan a enseñar a la persona que ya toma. Toma, si se concentra, el curandero se concentra con la persona y entonces va a ver en qué parte está el mal. Y
ve adentro de la persona.
Dentro del cuerpo se va.
See inside the body.
Entonces, de ahí entonces viene otros espíritus o imágenes a indicarlo con qué planta le va a hacer el tratamiento de la curación.
Which will show the healer which other plants to use to heal the person.
Ese es el ayahuasca. Esto es la chacuruna, ¿no? Se lo conoce por las guías.
The little protuberances.
Right.
¿Usted podría aclarar un poco más el papel que juega la chacruna adentro de la ayahuasca?
Para dar la visualidad a la ayahuasca. Y también para endulzar, como si le echaréis el dulce para bajar el amargo.
Ayahuasca is used by indigenous shamans throughout the western Amazon, but it is only one form of a worldwide phenomenon that does not necessarily involve the use of drugs. Shamans around the world say they communicate with the spirits of nature in visions and dreams to maintain a balanced relationship between human communities and the natural world. They reach these states of consciousness in different ways, including repetitive drumming, chanting, and fasting. One shamanic way of understanding nature is to identify with it. Some Amazon shamans turn into jaguars by turning their hearts into jaguar hearts. The Ashaninka believe in the existence of invisible spirits who can be seen by ingesting tobacco and ayahuasca. Some of these spirits live at the bottom of lakes, where shamans can visit them and discuss science, among other things.
Anteriormente ya se ha conversado con los científicos, porque manejamos submarinos que viven seres dentro del agua. Ellos tienen sus barcos, entonces aparecen las personas de distintos países, de distintos conocimientos. Entonces con todas esas personas ya nosotros estamos vinculados para llevar adelante el conocimiento de las plantas.
I don't know really where I am today. And for tonight, I mean, I'm scared because it's something unknown. But at the same time, I really hope that it's going to be an experience that will make me understand better the spiritual part of nature.
We sat on cushions in a thatch roof hut open to the sounds of the surrounding jungle. Juan Flores brought out a plastic bottle filled with the bitter brown brew of ayahuasca. He blew tobacco smoke on it. The Ashaninka believe tobacco enhances the medicine of other plants, including ayahuasca. He offered some to each of us. Then he began to sing.
Linda cha coronita, shayari nukayaya, medicina nukayaya, dai 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 dai. Rai da dai da dai dai dai, nai na nai na nai nai nai, nai na nai na nai nai, ramai ramai troncoi ni.
When the lights went out, it was too dark for the video camera, and all I can tell you is what I saw. At first, I saw an intricate circuit board. I was traveling through the electronic maze trying to find a way out when I realized I still had my hand on the camera. I took it off and breathed more easily. Inside a green leaf, I saw tiny organisms with fluttering tail fins. I followed them into a deep blue lake. A hatch opened on the side of a greenish-blue submarine, and I went aboard. Scientists with white coats and wide foreheads gazed into blipping monitors, which I understood were hooked up to my own body. I asked these plant scientists to show me the smallest thing in my body. Blood vessels and nerve cells flashed by, and then two glowing snakes standing on their tails appeared before me, spiraling around the double helix of DNA.
Bueno, ha sido una reunión muy precisa. También el remedio estaba preciso, exacto, como para hacer los estudios. Porque también cuando la mareación es muy alto, entonces hay mucha fuerza, ya la persona se pone un poco de equilibrio y las visiones vienen más violentas, ¿no? Pasa. Agarró la punta de la cinta y dio la vuelta. Es como la película. Cinta termina, es un Icaro. Agarra otra cinta, es otro Icaro. Y cada persona, yo voy haciendo su Icaro, de cada persona es un Icaro, una planta, un Icaro, una planta.
I met two plant spirits. The first one was the mother of Shakruna. I didn't so much see her as a visual form, but she was just everywhere all around me, and there was no way I could not recognize her presence. And she told me that she was my first plant teacher, and that she was always there to protect me and guide me whenever I could make the bridge over to see her. And so the experience of meeting her was very scary, and I kept wishing for some sort of smaller, more meeker spirit of some nice little plant. And eventually I realized that it was her strength and her power that I really need to support me in the type of science and profession that I have. In terms of what I do, there are ways that she is like me, and it is her, her essential qualities that I need for support.
I was able to fly, to travel, and I was able to see psychedelic pictures, which I cannot forget. There's splendid colors with movement, color, movement. It's marvelous. I was able to see some sheets with lists of groups of 4 letters, and I cannot recognize precisely these letters, but immediately I was thinking of the basis of DNA.
Each of the scientists came into the ayahuasca session with a question about their research.
I was coming into a cell. My mind was traveling into a cell, and where you had a cell division. And I mean, I could very, very clearly at that point see the chromosomes and see how they were built up, and the different parts of them, and the movement in the chromosome. So I'm happy to be able to go back and have a look in the electron microscope.
In several of my visions, I saw the general shape of DNA as we recognize it from our perspective now. That's the double helix. I didn't zoom in and analyze them in any sort of detailed way. But the other thing that I do remember is that the project that I was given, kind of a general go in this direction pointer on, was one where we're looking to have clone out genes in the chromosomal DNA using a specific hook, which is that about 50 or 60% of all human genes are marked by a structure called an island, or a CPG island. It's a structure that has a lot of G's and C's, and it has very special properties. And so I was able to see these islands as they kind of, map out on the chromosomes, and that they're very special structurally.
But Jean-Pierre Dufour found ayahuasca did not provide any answers for his research on the proteins involved in male fertility in mice.
I asked questions, and she answered, no, your questions are not really interesting for me. I am quietly sure that we can obtain information from ayahuasca concerning molecular biology, but I am not sure that we can obtain information when we want. It is when an ayahuasca wants.
In the garden, the scientists and the shaman found common ground.
In science, we have been said to be in our mind. In spiritualities, we have been said to be in our heart. And I think that ayahuasca tells us we have to be together in our mind and in our heart. For me, it's a principle, the main teaching of ayahuasca.
In terms of shamans being scientists, from the very specific things that Juan Flores described to us, what he practices is an art, and there are rules and principles, and he's very precise and specific about how he prepares plants, and he knows exactly why everything happens in a particular way. So it is not at all dissimilar from why we would do an experiment in a particular way. Unless we can integrate the indigenous ways of knowing and open up the world of communication to more spiritual realms and communication with nature and listening to nature about how we can rebalance our lives and our world, we're in serious danger. And so I think that this bridge and this mutual acknowledgement and recognition and understanding is critical.
I think that the long-term survival of these people and their cultures will only happen if the dominant Western world comes to treat them as equals or even as superiors in some domains. You know, that we will consider it as actively in our interest to have these people with their different take of reality and their different point of view for us to talk with them.
But what part of this dazzling ayahuasca spectacle is scripted by the plants, and what part is projected by our own hearts and minds? Science is supposed to be objective. Shamanism is supremely subjective.
I think there are many subjective and emotional aspects during these experiments, so we have to choose among the answer we obtain.
Jean-Pierre plans to return to Peru to learn more about the medicinal plants of the Amazon. For Pia Malno, it was a difficult experience with warnings about her work.
I would say that it's probably one of the most important experience I had in my life. When I'm looking back at it, it was quite a hard trip, in the sense that it was a lot of fears involved, and but I'm certainly very glad for having been able to participate in the experience. What I learned in Peru was the plants are happy as long as they can help the human beings. So what I think is that it's important to actually analyze what you are doing. There has been a tendency to just go for benefit and not really consider what's important for mankind and for nature. And I think that's, in a sense, that's also a dark side. That's the dark side of genetic engineering right now. And that's why people are reacting so strongly also against it.
Loris Duvet continued her research on CPG islands and completed a painting she had been working on.
I actually saw a view of a chromosome with the islands in it, and how the islands looked actually physically distinct from the rest of the DNA, and that they were landing pads for the proteins to come sail in and sit down and activate the genes that were in them. So that's the view that I saw, and I was told that there would be all kinds of unexpected things that would come out of pursuing this project, that it would be a very fruitful path to continue. The sequences in the genome that we're looking at might be involved in different types of kind of triggers along the pathway in cancer.
I was worried that these three scientists would get on the airplane, come all this way, and see nothing and learn nothing, or maybe they'd see completely irrelevant things, cartoons, toasters, just objects, but nothing relevant to their inquiries. Well, it turns out that all three of them reported seeing information relevant to the research that they were conducting. And all three of them came away feeling that this experience had enriched them as human beings and as scientists.
But what about Juan Flores? Narby traveled to the shaman's village to find out how he was faring after the experiment. The shaman had recently come close to losing his life. While in the forest gathering ingredients for ayahuasca, Flores walked through a tripwire strung across the path. This triggered a shotgun booby trap illegally set by a hunter.
Estos son los disparos, ¿no?
Sí, son las municiones, 33 municiones. Todo eso chancado, quebrado así el hueso y también cuarteado así, 3. Una vez que me agachaba ya me quise pararme más fuerte y me volteaba ya. Y mi parado me caí la quebrada, ¿no?
Estaba sangriendo ahí. El caso de un curandero que él mismo está herido, ¿no? Gravemente herido, pero sin la posibilidad de ir a un hospital. Entonces se hubiera podido tratar de herir la herida solamente con las plantas y los medidos de un curandero.
Según la gravedad de la enfermedad, porque en este caso me parece que había que tomar otras precauciones con los doctores para hacer los primeros auxilios y más que todo el acomodamiento de los huesos porque estaba completamente destruido en astillas.
In the jungle, Narby experienced a recurring attack of gallstones that kept him up all night in agony. The next morning, he asked for the shaman's help.
Se llama la hoja del piñón colorado.
Juan Flores prepared an herbal tea, which he said would cleanse Jeremy's insides and get him back on his feet again.
corteza, así como.
Sí, la corteza o la raíz.
¿Sabes? El maestro tiene más abajo.
And although his place is surrounded by poachers, loggers, and oil drillers, Juan Flores has found a refuge in the rainforest.
Entonces yo definitivamente tenía la seguridad muy antes de guardar un lugar como esto. El conocimiento que yo tengo no es quizás tan, puedo decir, de mi persona, sino que tengo la suerte de que la madre tierra naturaleza me brinde sus conocimientos por medio de los espíritus. Y ese conocimiento que yo tengo es una causa que yo no quiero llevar todo mi conocimiento al tiempo de la muerte, sino que quiero dejar mis enseñanzas para las demás personas que quieren aprender sobre las plantas medicinales y tener ese conocimiento y puedan defenderse de algunas enfermedades que van a venir en el futuro.
Tú eres como un guardián del saber indígena, entonces.
Sí, sí, soy uno de ellos.
So, is there a future for collaborations between shamans and scientists?
Well, as scientists themselves often say, more research is needed, urgently.
Linda ayahuasca ini ramai ramai tongko ini. Linda ayahuasca ini ramai ramai tongko ini. Ramai ramai tongko ini. Mayari nai na nai na nai 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 na nai nai nai.
Yeah.